Hey everyone, it's the last keynote, so maybe some people are tired. I'm gonna be talking for 20 minutes roughly. I just want to know, like, because I know who is Polish or is not, but like, who is European? Okay, and the non-European, where you from? Brazil, and that's it. United States. Okay, yeah, that's almost European. I'm gonna talk about the family and just to know like who roughly heard about the family before. Okay, so three people. So I can talk a little bit about what we do. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to talk about the family just a little bit, so you understand how we came together and how we understood Europe from a lot of different ways. And then I'm going to talk about the ingredients that are needed in an ecosystem to make it healthy, because I know that OMG Krakow is basically trying to build an ecosystem, and that's the thing that we've been seeing in France, in the UK, in Germany, and then in 15 other different countries. So we start to have kind of a model to understand how to create the best ecosystem and what are the ingredients. So roughly what we do, we started in Paris. Nobody's perfect. We started in Paris 7 years ago. And some of you know Paris right now. It's kind of booming, or at least like a lot of people want to do startup. But 7 years ago, it was nothing. Like literally, we had no one that wanted to do startups. Like I was a startup founder myself before. And when you go into like a dinner and you tell that you're like an entrepreneur, people think that you're unemployed. They're like, oh yeah, you don't have a job. Like you're building your own job. And the problem is that this creates, and I'm gonna try to go back on this. This creates a lot of complex problems. And so the thing that we started with the family at the beginning was to start to educate people around entrepreneurship. In France at the time, you had a lot of money, you had a lot of talent, but you had no ambition. No one wanted to build a startup. And the only few ones that wanted to build a startup, they were going to the US. And so it was really, really bad. So we started to put videos online that basically explained how the most ambitious thing you can do if you're an ambitious French person was to build a company. And we made entrepreneurship glorious. What I mean we made entrepreneurship glorious is that those videos that we made, and it was not like viral video, 3 minutes, and then like a cat like clicking or whatever. We had like hour-long videos about the myth of going into a startup adventures, and it made millions and millions of views. What happened is that people from anywhere in France, students, like people without a job, engineers, anyone, was starting to get educated hours after hours during lunchtime, watching our videos for hours and hours and hours. And they were like, okay, like I'm crazy, but I'm not alone. There's those guys with weird colors that call the family, and they think like me. And so what happened is that we made being crazy, meaning being super ambitious and wanting to be $1 billion company, we made it not something that you were alone in your site by yourself. And this created a big movement. This created a movement about wanting to become an entrepreneur. And I don't know if I put it here, but basically our mantra is anyone can become an entrepreneur. And it doesn't mean that everyone will, it doesn't mean that anyone will become an entrepreneur. It just means that an entrepreneur can come from anywhere. And we stole that thing. We stole it from Ratatouille. Who saw Ratatouille? Like the movie, like about like a rat that wants to become a cook. Everything that we believe is in that movie. That's it. Like literally, it's the same but with entrepreneurship. And so what happened is that we started to have dozens and dozens and dozens of startups that wanted to get into the family. And they're like, okay, what's the deal? Like, what do you do for us? And we just tell them we're a family, We're not an accelerator. It's not 3 months. You get in, you get out. Like, because when you get into the family, you never leave, Like they say, you never leave the family. But that's happening with us too. And we started to help startups with whatever we could. And that was the first step, education. The second step was to build an infrastructure that help the founders delay their need for capital. Because one of the big problems we have in Europe is that founders get money from lawyers, from accountants, from whatever, and they give away a lot of like equity. They take 40% for 100K, and then the company is dead forever. Because when you have a big investors from London or from the US, it cannot come to the round. So we started to build an infrastructure that make it super cheap by either making deals or either building product ourselves or basically building leverage. So founders didn't have to raise money at the beginning. And then the third thing that we did, obviously, was to help those founders with great mindset, great infrastructure, get access to the best capital, and not only in France but in Europe. And this is the way we started to look at Europe and not just as France. And we launched Berlin and London. And the goal for us, through this access to the best capital in Europe, was to create one single platform. Whether you're in like Spain, whatever, France, Germany, UK, anywhere, Poland, you have access to one platform where you can raise money, we can expand, and you're part of a European family. So instead of thinking about your country as a place where your market is also, you're thinking as your country as the only place where you're operating from, but serving potentially all Europe and raising money from all over Europe. And why I'm saying that is that we went on a European tour, after taking, like we took since the beginning 700 startups from all over Europe. We helped 100 of them raise like short of €1 billion from all the best investors in Europe. The portfolio valuation now like is reaching 3 billion. So we start to have, after 7 years, a lot of track records and looking at how our startups are expanding and where they're going in Europe. So to do that, to go further than that, then we went into a European tour in 15 different countries in Europe. And what we discovered, and we went not in Krakow, unfortunately, and we went to Warsaw, but we heard so many things about Krakow and Warsaw that then I decided to come to Krakow now. We realized that every time we went to Tallinn, to Amsterdam, to Warsaw, to Kiev, to all those hubs, in Europe, we realized that the only friends in common we had with those local people were not European friends, were not people from Paris, London, and Berlin. They knew no one. The only friends we had were American friends. So you go to fucking like Tallinn, you go there, and then your friends from the United States know everyone, and no one from Europe knows them. And we said, okay, that's a pity. Because if founders are not raising money from investors all around Europe, are not having so many friends in Europe that they just can pick up the phone and know the best lawyer, the best VC, or the best things to set up your company, then they're never going to think about expanding to Europe. And it's so dumb, because if they don't do it, then an American company does it. And so doing that, we realized the problem about building an ecosystem that is healthy, that is unified all over Europe. And we started to develop a model in how to do that. And I'm going to go quickly through the model that we've developed and to the 3 main ingredients we believe are needed for any entrepreneurial ecosystem to thrive and to become healthy, whether it's in Paris, Krakow, Moscow, any place. But before that, what is an ecosystem? Basically, that's the Wikipedia definition. It's not something super complex. But basically, an ecosystem is a habitat where things are living together. And one of the main important things is that this habitat is healthy, otherwise it doesn't work. The healthiest habitat that we know for entrepreneurs today, it's called Silicon Valley. And people are always like describing how we can copy Silicon Valley and bring it in Europe and so on and so forth. The problem is that Silicon Valley, first, it's something that will never happen again. This is a glitch in the history of humankind, like Florence was a glitch in the arts history, and you can never try to copy it. Why? Because the Valley is so different. The Valley is 2 main things that were not in Europe. The first thing is that what's the most impressive things about the Silicon Valley, it's not like the fashion elite, like the Mark Zuckerberg or the Elon Musk. What's most impressive in Silicon Valley is that average people can succeed. It's insane. You put the same entrepreneur in a healthy ecosystem like there, and something great can happen. You put it in Europe, and they die. Why? Because the things around Europe and the people around the European entrepreneurs, we think they are toxic. And what we try to do is to recreate closed, super closed environments where we can control the level of toxicity and lower it as much as possible. To give you an analogy, it's a little bit like if you try to think about like entrepreneurs as swimmers, like professional swimmers, you train them hard, you build them muscle, like you're like, okay, like they're strong, they have technique and everything. And then you're like, okay, now it's time for the race. You put them in a pool full of acid, they die, and you're like, not good enough. No, that's what's happening into Europe, That's what's happening. And when I talk about toxicity, toxicity is basically anything that will lose time for an entrepreneur, well, anything that an entrepreneur will lose time on something that is completely useless. And that could be anything like a grant from the government. There could be a journalist. It could be a bad investor. It could be like a bad like ethos about entrepreneurship in your country. Again, like, you know, 7 years ago in Paris, when you said you were an entrepreneur, you will not get any number from girls or guys. They will leave. They will be like, it's fine, that's good. Now you'd say you're an entrepreneur, people are like, oh, that's the coolest thing in the world. So things can change fast, but they change, and when they do, the ecosystem becomes a little bit more healthy. So 3 ingredients to create a great ecosystem, wherever you are in the world. First one is capital. Obviously, you cannot build or grow an amazing company if you don't have capital and infrastructure. And infrastructure is basically capital tied up in tangible assets. The second one is know-how. All those developers, designers, salespeople that make, you know, the company, and that will bring the talent and bring the expertise to do it. And the third one that usually people forget about, it's the rebellion. When you build a company, when you're an entrepreneur, more than when you build a company, when you're an entrepreneur, you're fighting against something. It's an act of rebellion. If you're not fighting about anything else, you're not an entrepreneur. Why? Because the world, at any moment in time, the world is in a static place. And at any moment of time, the world is dominated by winners who control everything. And so building a company is going against that and making the thing become static to in movement, dynamic. And so this rebellious part of being an entrepreneur is key to any ecosystem. And those 3 ingredients, it's not only important to know how absent or present they are and at what level in an ecosystem. The main important thing is where those 3 ingredients are coming into each other. Where are capitalists, engineers, and rebels bringing together in a place, in a moment, in a common endeavor to create this mindset, to create this ethos. And so that makes 7 combinations. We have, well, or 8 if we say that nothing exists, but that means 7 combination of an intersection either in between know-how, capital, rebellion, or the 3 together. And so I'm going to go quickly on the 7 different combination and telling you what are the ecosystems that are right now in that thing. The first one is capital only. It creates a rent-seeking economy, place where it's dominated by a few winners and nothing happens. It's tied up in natural resources like the Persian Gulf. The rebellion is repressed, whether it's political or entrepreneurial, or like in France, for example, the people are actively lobbying against anything that is new. So you have a taxi company, Uber comes, you repress it as much as possible by either throwing the cars out or voting a law that it's illegal. The second thing is capital and know-how. It's an efficiency economy. Problem is efficiency is often the enemy of innovation. It's innovation only done in groups, like in big companies, to kind of continue doing things the same, but cheaper or better. The know-how only is the contractor economy, which means that you have a lot of talents, but you have no rebellion, and you have no capital. What happens is that it creates like an economy like India. A little bit like here. Like here, in Krakow, you have a lot of talent, and when you only have know-how and not the 2 other things, it becomes like IT supplier for the rest of the world. Ukraine is like that a lot. Like you go in Ukraine, it's mostly this. Fourth thing, know-how and rebellion. So you don't have capital. I call that the playground economy. It means that people are good. They are rebellious, but they have no means, so they're like kids playing in the playground. You know, it's like it's fun. So like the government is giving them a little bit of money. A government is giving them like a little bit of grants, so they create like research. And basically, it's like if Google started in the 98. Sorry, they started in 98. They developed the PageRank algorithm, and then it stays like a research project, and there is no like empire being created. That's the playground economy. France was like there 7 years ago. Rebellion only, it's subsistence economy, it's political movement, it's art, it's a lot of creation, a lot of rebellion, but no know-how, no capital, it only stays activism. We have a lot of that in Berlin. I'm living in Berlin, there's a lot of that. Rebellion plus capital is the financial economy. We always think that the financial ones are like the clean ones. Finance in the 80s was the most rebellious thing you can do. If you went into like a marketplace in Wall Street, it was only people like going from super low places who just worked hard and had like a lot of leverage. And the all three together here, it's the entrepreneurial economy. It's a place where, like San Francisco, you had a lot of skills because you had like all the semiconductor people being there and just like, you know, knowing a lot of stuff. You have money from the Department of Defense, putting a lot of contract, and after all the VC industry financing the innovation. And then you had the hippies. And when I say hippies, it's all those activists like gay rights movements, Summer of Love, and all those things that wanted to change the world. But in San Francisco, what magic happened is that those three, at some point, went into the same place. They were not like all, you know, far away from each other. They were doing companies together. And so the question after that is like, is an entrepreneurial economy preferable? Is it good or not? Like, does it make like a difference in my country and in my ecosystem or not? And I'm going to talk about three quick examples, to see where you subtract an ingredient from an ecosystem, what it does. So for example, Russia, when it went from Soviet to capitalist, it started as a playground economy. A lot of people knew a lot of things, and they had like this rebellion sense. And then when they went capitalist, everybody left to Israel or the United States. And it only became a subsistence economy with just the rebellion, and all the companies started to like only be like natural resources and things that are linked to the power. When a playground economy like France became a contractor economy, it happened in the 90s and the 2000s. Basically, we had a lot of rebellion. People wanted to, like, you know, France, they always go on strike and they're always rebellious. That's something we have forever. I mean, we did the revolution at some point. We have to have some rebellious credit. And then at some point, when you only do projects that never take off because there is no capital and people don't want to go further, then at some point it becomes just a know-how economy. And we had this symptom that is crazy in France, is that everybody started to wanting to be the next Google, and slowly they became a web agency. And so it was like all the time like that. You meet them at day one, they're like, yeah, we're going to kill it, we're going to be Google. And after 6 months, you tell them, hey, how is it going the next Google? They're like, ah, yeah, we took some like development contracts on the side, and now we're selling software to the US. I'm like, ah, that sucks. And a financial economy, capital plus rebellion turning into subsistence economy, it's basically Greece. The entrepreneurs have a key role here because they can transform. And I'm going to give you just, again, 3 small examples, so you're going to see how crazy it is and how it can change fast. Israel, for example, in the 80s, nobody knows. Like, a lot of people forgot about that, but Israel now is a startup nation, it's amazing, and so on and so forth. In the 80s, they had this symptom that everybody was creating amazing products, like really, it was amazing, super technical, but they didn't know how to sell it and how to expand, you know? And so what they created the Yozma program, which basically brought American venture capital into Israel and was only invested in innovation. It was not in capital invested in like old school companies, like natural resources infrastructure and so on and so forth. It was just startup. And from that, then Israel took over. Financial economy is the same. London, after the crisis, they become a place where all the talent potentially is living, and locally they had no talent. So they started a lot of governmental efforts to ease the visa process and brought in a shitload of talent in general, entrepreneurs, and they became, after 2008, a fintech hub and an entrepreneurial hub. Before that, it was not happening at all. And an efficiency economy into an entrepreneurial economy, it's Silicon Valley actually, like when Fairchild Conductor, which is the mother of all companies in the Valley in the 60s, it was just the first one. It actually it's been created from like a big like company. It was just the innovation arm of a big company. So even a place like Silicon Valley, that now is the birthplace of all great startups and all great bubbles, even Silicon Valley started out as a place where innovation was not done in the rebellious way. It was done in big companies. If you have those 3 ingredients, please, please, please let the entrepreneurs cook them. What I mean by that is that in any ecosystem, you have two roles. You have two types of people. You have the leaders who are leading the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and you have the feeders who are feeding resources, talent, and so on and so forth. The leaders should always be the entrepreneurs. It should never be big companies. It should never be government that try things first, because 100% of the time, 100, where government tries to kick in a startup ecosystem, it dies. It's like, I don't know, like, like building a company is, again, rebellious. When you're rebellious, you're going against the status quo. So if you're being helped by the status quo, which is the state, it doesn't fit in together. So the role of those of those around should be to put leader in place, entrepreneurs, being self-started, and then bring them the support they ask and not anything else. And beware of the hype, because at some point it's cool to become an entrepreneur, and I wish that it happens all over Europe, but becoming an entrepreneur becoming the next cool things. The thing is that being an entrepreneur is really hard. You know, it's really dumb to talk about that like that, but it's like sport. Like sport, you know, you look at TV and you see like the sport people all being like beautiful and easy, and then when you try to do sport yourself, you're like, fuck, it's actually fucking hard. Like I'm never gonna do that forever. And it's the same with entrepreneurial. What I put as a quote is a quote from one of the biggest investor in the United States and one of the most famous one. It says like being an entrepreneurial is imperial will to power people who want to crush their competition. And I will quote somebody else too, which I love, which is Walter White from Breaking Bad. When Jesse asked Walter White, what's his name? Mr. I don't know. Anyway, when he asked the guy, like, what's his name? Eisenberg. Like, are you in the money business or are you in the cooking drug business? And he says, like, I'm in the empire business. And what I mean by that is that the hype of everybody wants to become an entrepreneur, it's fine, it's cool, it's nice, has to be equally balanced by the fact that we should only have them being focused on building empires and anything less. To finish, really fast, I'm going to compare a couple of ecosystems, and you see like how it's differently balanced and how it could be for Krakow. United States, a lot of rent sinking, a lot of real estate, a lot of natural resources, for sure a lot of rebellion and know-how, but the three are always coming together in Silicon Valley and are creating a huge friction in between. Israel, a small amount of capital, not a lot. Amazing rebellion. You know, if you've been to Israel or if you've received Israeli tourists, they're not like the most easy. It's called chutzpah. And that, again, now is becoming all together, and it's being called a startup nation, and it's having a huge impact. Actually, Israel, like before that, was a lot like Krakow or Ukraine. It was only IT services for the rest of the world. And in 10 years, they changed quickly. United Kingdom's huge rent seeking, a super small pool of talents, and then with political help, huge immigration policies, and even if now the Brexit is balancing this tendency, they brought most of the European talent all over London. Like most of the people in Poland, I feel, if they're not going to the US, in Europe, they will go to London, nothing else. Germany, my dear Germany, I'm French though, but I live in Germany. A lot of like know-how, a lot of rent seeking, but so few rebellion. Like most of the innovation is done in big groups. Why? Because you can have more money, you can have less risk, and God knows the German, they hate risk, and you can have more resources. What happened is that the rebellion part of Germany is all concentrated in Berlin. And this rebellious part in Berlin, they don't talk at all with the capitalists because they hate the capitalists. Fuck capitalists. So what happened is that you could have like potentially like a big overlap and create an amazing entrepreneurial ethos. What happens is that they don't talk to each other. So the Silicon Alley, as they like to call it, is like a super small overlap and only stays like that, and it doesn't change a lot. And France, well, my dear friends for now, for sure. France is really weird. So you have a lot of capital, like a lot of rent seeking, a lot of lobby, a lot of like friendships and so on like that. A lot of rebellion. I mean, again, revolution, so on and so forth. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, like there was like two Air France directors, so like the big heads, you know, like the big guys, and they had like a strike, and they went to the strike, said, okay, we're going to talk to them. They literally went out without their shirts. The guys tore the shirts apart, and this is normal. Like nobody, like when they left, they didn't say like, oh, this is impossible to do, blah. They're like, okay, we're in France, so we're rebellious. But those rebellious, they decide to just go on the street without creating companies because they think creating companies is like doesn't make a change. And we have a lot of know-how. We have one of the best engineering schools, one of the best design schools. But what happened in France and what's changing now more and more, and that was more like a picture of a few years ago, is that the three are coming together at least. And that's my point. If you don't make those three to come together, if you have a lot of capital rebellion and know-how on different spaces, you're dead. What about Krakow? Actually, I love Poland. I love Poland because I live in Germany. And I'm going to tell you and I'm going to tell you why. If for a French, I'm sorry, I'm going to go cliché, but for a French person, everything that is east of Strasbourg, which is the east of France, is Germany. Like so for us, like Polish people are just Germans that are a bit more blonde. That's it. We don't see it like complex at all. But the thing is that when I came and had Polish friends now, when I came to Poland, one of the things that made me so excited about Poland is that people are crossing the streets without looking if the little guy is red or you know or green. If you go to Germany, like a rule is like God's will. Like a rule is a rule. What I feel in France and in Poland is like a rule is a suggestion. It's like, okay, it's the rule, okay, see, I'm gonna like, okay, we'll see. And this I love because I think that Poland has an amazing, like rebellious atmosphere going on, and it's integrated into the social culture. People don't think about rules, they just think about what they want to do. And so when we went to Poland and we saw the entrepreneurs, what we saw was hustlers that were trying to build something ambitious and had a side company on the side, which was kind of creating like a IT soft, like IT and so on and so forth. But more and more, those like rebellious people start to have access, one, to capital, because I'm sorry, there is no problem of capital in Europe, maybe Series B, Series C, but if you're a Polish company and you're crushing it, capital will come to you. I'm sorry, but like, do you know from what company the last year top growing startup in the world came from? Any idea? No, that would be too easy. No, but like, okay, what country? Like Romania, UiPath went from 1 billion to 7 billion in like 18 months. It's insane. They're doing like automation of processes in big companies with AI, obviously, otherwise you don't have a 7 billion valuation. And they crushed this thing. Since UiPath came about, all the VCs in London, they hired someone to look at Romania. Because they're like, oh, you never know. Maybe 7 billion in 18 months, maybe we have a new one like that. What I'm saying is if you're building something in Europe that is amazing, capital will come to you. Capital is the thing that moves the fastest in the world. So what you need is not like more potential access to capital, because it's there, is you need to go travel. Like you go one day in London, one day in Paris, one day in Berlin, even just a weekend. You take a few meetings, you enjoy. What's the downside you can have? You enjoy and you do business. You do it in the weekend, so you will not work in the weekend potentially anyway. Think about it, if you're in the United States, you have San Francisco, New York, LA, and that's it. You're not going to go in Cincinnati to have a weekend and then do business. It's impossible. In Europe, we have the chance to have this amazing place where we can do business. And once you have network in Paris, once you have network in Berlin and other places, you're the top 1%, because nobody does that. No one. And so for me, what I think is that for Krakow and in Poland in general, is that if you combine this amazing rebellious, mindset, and you basically start connect to Europe way more on the side, you have unlimited upside and limited downside. The downside, again, you spend a weekend, it's fine. The upside, you raise money from Series A, from a London investor, because suddenly they don't think you as like a Polish entrepreneur, they see you as a European business that could be like the next investment. And if you bring that capital potentially with all the good skills that there are here, I think, and I'm not saying that because I'm in Poland, like because really, like when I go to, I don't know, like Kiev, for example, I don't think like that. But I think that Poland can become way bigger in 10 years in creating those amazing, ambitious company than Germany is, for example. I really do believe that. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, it's now.
Thanks for that talk, Hugo. I don't know if we can go back to your methodology slide, ecosystem methodology slide. But did I hear you correctly that what you're saying is that Krakow needs a dose of rebellion on here? Is that where the ecosystem's short?
No, that's what they have. So I think that Krakow and Poland in general, they have the rebellious part. They have people who want to build empire, but right now, instead of building empires, they are building web agencies. Because when we met people in Krakow, all of them had side hustle. So it's a limitation for sure, because you want to be fully on your thing. But I think that this mindset is incredible, and I've never seen that anywhere else in Europe. What they need, what you guys need, I believe, is that part. And I don't think it's about like having access to capital, because I think it's here. If what I believe is that like all the toxic investor in Poland, they just need to disappear and be replaced by outside investors. What I mean by that, when I came to Poland, I learned about Bridge Alpha. Who knows Bridge Alpha? Okay, so like the right side of the room. Bridge Alpha is a governmental program that basically gives money to roughly 80% of the VCs and bring the most toxic terms that you can have in any deal in Europe. Like it's the worst that I've seen in all over Europe. Why I'm saying that? When you get money from those VCs that have themselves accepted money for Bridge Alpha, it means that basically Bridge Alpha, the government, if they want, if they think this is a strategic company, they can take the shares of the company. If this company again wants, like, has an acquisition offer from an American company, the government through Bridge Alpha can seize it and match the bid and acquire the company. Whether it's good or bad, like I'm not here to say like as a governmental endeavor it is. What I'm saying is that any great investors at Series A or Series B will open the book and will see that they will run away. They will not invest. So that part, it's not about adding so much because capital will come. It's about subtracting a lot of the toxicity which is in the form of those programs, which are, even without people knowing it, killing a lot of deals. It's like the toxicity, the worst part of the toxicity is not when you know that it's toxic. Like say, for example, you're lactose intolerant. You eat lactose, you know it, you're like, oh shit, now my belly is fucked up. But when you don't know that you're lactose intolerant and you keep drinking milk, that's when it's really bad. So I think that talent, rebellion, you have, great access to capital, or more importantly, way less toxicity around capital would be amazing. Anyone for Bridge Alpha in the room? Any other question? And if you disagree, it's fine. I disagree with myself a lot too. So.
Hugo, I have the microphone.
Sorry.
So I wanted to ask, like, because you mentioned that you had the chance to develop the ecosystems in France and in Berlin, and you had some experiences that you may compare. So, like, which path was the hardest? Like, where it was more difficult to create the environment that meets all those criteria that you are listing now, like have the perfect combination? Or have you achieved that already, or not yet? And so where like it was harder to build
the most difficult environment?
Yes, like.
So the roughest place is Ukraine, because I mean we know why, but like when you think about Ukraine, you think about a lot of things, and they're all true in a way. But because it's super rough, so all the Ukrainian companies, for example, they don't incorporate in Ukraine at all. They all incorporate in Delaware. And since day one, what they want is to live. They don't even on LinkedIn. They don't even put Kiev. They're like in San Francisco, even if everybody's in Kiev, but they're like, fuck it. I incorporate in Delaware, I say I'm from San Francisco and I live in Ukraine and I have cheap talent. Because as soon as an ecosystem is too toxic for entrepreneur, the best one will leave. And for sure, like you can say like, oh, it's about because people don't want to build companies and company building is not sexy. But in case of Ukraine, it's also because of a lot of other things. So that's one of the toughest place. But then again, when you put a lot of pressure and a lot of toxicity, the one that survives, they're invincible, you know? So there's always like two sides of the coin. For me, what I'm obsessed about, it's not to make those invisible people survive because they will survive, they're invisible. For me, it's like I want to have a middle class of entrepreneurship. And this is the most important thing in Europe in general. And the middle class of entrepreneurship is all those people who would succeed in the valley because the thing is amazing, and they are dying here, where they could have done good enough companies, good enough exit to like create this again, like any country, like good middle class that can make the thing vibrate. So that's one part, Ukraine. The second part where it's actually difficult to create companies, I think it's Denmark, even if there's a lot of amazing companies. But on the other side, Denmark is so fucking like comfortable. Like everybody is super beautiful, all the streets are working, the infrastructure is amazing, like the life is cool. Like, you don't want to work. I mean, you don't want to work fast. So all the Danish entrepreneurs, the value that we have for them is that we put them under pressure. We're not telling them like, oh, you're in a perfect place, Denmark, you have time to build the perfect product with the perfect button and everything, because you have China and the US, and we're putting them like China and US behind their ass so they move faster. And it's another form of toxicity, see? Ukraine toxicity is you have oligarch that can, basically seize your company and then tell you to fuck up. And then Copenhagen toxicity is that you think you have all the time in your life because government is giving you so much money to not work anyway that you can do it for 5 years without suffering, So Europe has that really thing together where toxicity sometimes means the same and sometimes it means totally different thing. What we build at the family, basically, is one platform. So if you're an entrepreneur from anywhere in Europe, from Poland, from Portugal, from Spain, you can have access to a single platform that is an easy front end to navigate all things European startup building, even if the back end, which is Europe, is messy and shitty.
Thank you. I have one more question before I
She has the
give
power.
the microphone. Sorry, but I would really want to ask that. So. You've mentioned that the services or the support that you're providing within the family is mainly driven by the needs expressed by the companies. So I wonder how you collect those insights, and from at least from my experience at the foundation, when I conduct interviews with different founders of ours, I see that their needs are actually quite different. Like they are at different stages of development. The different paths, and some have global. Ideas. The other are more local, right? So, the question is how to decide which type of services to focus on and which bring the most value for the community in general, right? So the ones that bring the highest impact. Can you advise us something here?
It's a lot of different things. So we provide education, the right mindset, the right way of thinking. So you're surrounded by crazy people and you think crazy is normal. That's super important. People are really, really thinking it's education. No, it's super important. Because when you're in that environment, everything becomes reinforcing. We provide infrastructure, tools, deals, services, so we can build leverage for our founders, so they have super cheap deals, or they have the best service provider, meaning connecting to the right lawyer in the right country, to know the 1,000 best people in Europe that are the best at what they do, and they are friends with us, so we can connect super easily. And then we provide capital. Basically, one of the things that you can die stupidly in Europe is to raise money from a bad investor. The money is not equal in Europe. Like investors in Europe, it's like mushrooms. When they're toxic, you die. It's like as simple as that. And when they're good, it's fine. But the downside is unlimited. You can go super down. And so what I mean by that is that what entrepreneur means is a family. They don't need like a service provider. They just need somebody that will stick with them until they die, and I will protect them. And protection could mean a lot of fucking things. What we do is that we don't have a standardized program, because we believe that when you're recreating an ecosystem, you cannot have a program, you just have an ecosystem. And so the startup get in, they never get out, and in between they ask us whatever they want, and we will help them. Sometimes we will kill, sometimes we will not kill. When I mean killing is like go on a fight. And the thing is that when you have that kind of relationship super strong with founders and they feel that you can do whatever for them, they will ask only the really, really important things of life and death. They will not tell you, oh, so what if I have a problem with my website? Like, no, it's like this, no. They will tell me like, okay, I'm gonna die in 6 months because my investor killed my term sheet. What do I do? And then you go on a war. So that's basically what we do. And this mode of functioning, like I don't know if I said it, but we just want to have people that we like and that are super ambitious, part of the family, so we can really have fun while building empires. And so we can always get wrong. So what we do is we have a simple deal. We tell to the startups, if you like what we say, if you like what we do, and you want to join the family, and you don't know if it's worth it or not, let's just shake hands. We work together for 1 year. We do whatever you want, and we start working with each other. If you like what we do, then you give us 5% of common stock, which means that we have no voting rights, we're on the same side as you. If you like what we do, you give us the 5% after 1 year. If you don't like it and you think it's not worth it, you take it back. We didn't sign anything, we just shook hands. And in that way we can build trust, long-term relationship with founders that really want to be with us and really want to think like us. And from now we have like 700 companies, we take 100 companies per year, and we just have a few that don't like us. Like some, it's human relationships. Some they hate us. They're like, oh fuck, I hate the way you think. And it's good that we just shook hands and that they can leave,
Thank you so much.
One question is that there are 3 very different groups of people, right, that you work with.
Yes.
So that's the capitalist, the scientists, and the rebellious guys. Yeah?
Engineers, yeah.
Oh yeah, engineers.
Scientists.
Well, sometimes they are the same.
Sometimes.
Anyway, so then I'm interested about the communication. So that how do you communicate to keep these groups together? So do you use maybe no bullshit principles, or how does it look like?
We have principles like that. One of them is paid forward. It's a little bit common in the startup world, but you have to keep repeating it because people, when you say like, do you believe in karma? People are like, yeah, karma is good. And then it's like, oh, do you want to help out a friend that is building a company? Oh no, fuck it. It's like, bro, it's the same. It's like literally, you don't know what you will get from that, but maybe in 10 years, this guy is Mark Zuckerberg, and you're happy you helped him out. That happens in the Valley. That's one thing that we keep repeating and we keep doing and but that's why it's called a family, because people intuitively, when they enter a family, they're like, okay, I have to pay it forward. I don't have to be in a transactional thing, what do I get? That's the first thing. The second thing that we sometimes put in the wall is partying is a serious matter. And I really mean that, we do a lot of dinners, we drink a lot of wine. I mean, we are French at the end of the day, so like we also have to be cliché. And in this way, you can create those kind of relationships that are going above just business. And when you love someone, then you can you can do whatever, and that's what we want to create. Basically, people don't understand, but the family is a place where people love each other so much that they do irrational things for each other. And this creates huge externalities. And we have a couple of one like that, that to basically put the people in the right mindset. So for sure they want to build empires, and they only want to do that. If you go into the family at a dinner and you say, oh yeah, I sold my company for 10 million, people are like, why? It's like, why did you sell at 10 million? People are like, you should sell at like 200, 300 million. And I'm really comfortable saying that because I think that in 5 years, people will just say that, but with a billion, Every year, people find ridiculous the amount of an accepted acquisition offer, like higher and higher. So this is the kind of places you want to have. We build that at a European level, but it doesn't have to be only the family that builds that, because wanting to build empires plus wanting to love the people you're fighting with, so much that you do rational things for them, I think that if we have that all over Europe, then we have a chance at becoming something else than just a museum, Because let's face it, like if we don't have like an entrepreneurial revolution in Europe, In 10, 15 years, Paris is a museum. Like Krakow too. I mean, you have a beautiful city. Last question? You had a question, I remember.
You're starting to convince me a bit more. Because originally, when you started, and you said a healthy ecosystem,
Yeah.
and then we went into here's a formula for Silicon Valley where there's 11% of the city is in poverty. I have a hard time seeing it as a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like a public thing. Like I'm talking about like healthy ecosystem as if you put someone, he can express or she can express the full potential as building a company. So if you put someone in the Silicon Valley, for sure there's going to be people shitting on the street. But I'm sorry, but it's not going to help. It's not going to make them build less good companies. So when I'm talking about healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's for the entrepreneur. For sure, Silicon Valley is not perfect. For sure. I will never live in Silicon Valley. I mean, I lived, so I will never live back in Silicon Valley. I don't like it. But as a place that kills less entrepreneur possible and creates the biggest one, it's healthy. On that sense. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand. I don't agree, but maybe just a suggestion. Add love to the ingredients is exactly how you described it. That it actually does require for you to interact with other people and love the other people and do it jointly as a community.
They have a lot of love,
You
but it's
know?
mainly due to LSD and MDMA, and that's like, it's true. That's another topic. All right, no more questions. Well, thank you very much. I will be there, so if you want to ask questions.